Hi, everybody. It's Todd Bishop from GeekWire. Before we get into this special bonus episode, I want to say thanks to everybody who came out to our live podcast recording Thursday night in Seattle's Fremont neighborhood at Fremont Brewing, hosted by the Fremont Chamber of Commerce. We had a great time. It was a great crowd, and my colleague John Cook and I had a lot of fun talking about this week's news and testing everybody's knowledge of Fremont and Seattle tech trivia. Our regular show from that event will be out Saturday morning as usual, so stay tuned for that this weekend. I think you're going to enjoy it, whether you were there or not. And again, thanks to everybody who came out. It was so much fun catching up with regular GeekWire podcast listeners and everybody from the Seattle tech community. But I wanted to get this episode out to you today because basically I never thought I would end up on the phone with the mayor of Cleveland, Ohio, talking about a piece that ran on GeekWire. Here's what happened for anyone who didn't follow this particular thread. Earlier this week, we published a guest column on GeekWire by Seattle tech veteran and angel investor Charles Fitzgerald. The headline was, "A Warning to Seattle, Don't Become the Next Cleveland." Charles argued that Seattle, like Cleveland in the 1950s, is a prosperous city that risks losing its economic edge if local leaders don't wake up to the challenges of the AI era. And the piece really hit a nerve. We heard cheers from the Seattle tech crowd. There were tons of people who agreed with Charles. And let's just say we got some very spirited feedback from Clevelanders in our inboxes. And then on Wednesday, Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb posted a response on LinkedIn pushing back on the framing of the piece and making it clear that Cleveland's comeback story, in his view, is the real lesson for cities like Seattle. So I got them on the phone together on Thursday, and in the end, it turned out that they agree on a lot. It's just a matter of which time frame is the right one to focus on. What followed was a really fascinating conversation about what happens when a city's economic foundation shifts, what Cleveland got wrong decades ago, and what it's doing right now. And also what Seattle should be paying attention to before it's too late. Here's the conversation.
I do want to just sort of let you two chat, but Mayor Bibb, I know you've read Charles's piece and you responded really thoughtfully. And of course, Charles mentioned his argument isn't necessarily about Cleveland today. It's not about Cleveland today. It's about how cities respond when their economic world changes. And so I wonder if I could set the table by asking you, what do you wish Cleveland's leaders had done differently back in the 1950s? And what could cities like Seattle learn from what you're doing today?
Well, I think there's some interesting comparisons that Charles alluded to between Cleveland and Seattle. I'm a student of history as an urbanist myself. And I remember in reading about the history of Seattle when Boeing had its bust in the early 1970s. I think somebody put up a sign in the highway of Seattle saying, when the last one to leave, make sure you turn the lights out. And what you saw after the Boeing bust in the early 1970s was that Seattle really had a game plan to leverage its assets in terms of research, innovation, and really took advantage of the technology boom, which has really propelled Seattle's growth. And if you look at Cleveland during that same time horizon, we got our butts kicked by bad trade deals, by globalization, by challenging macroeconomic headwinds. And unfortunately, we didn't have a game plan to respond to the technological age that occurred. And that really left our city behind. And I think really since the 1990s, we have been really focused on making sure we're not left behind again. So in many ways, I think there's a lot we can learn from, and a lot we have learned, and I've learned from what Seattle did from 1970 up until now. And now, it seems as if Seattle is in this, turning point moment where it's trying to reinvent itself. Because frankly, I envy problems around growth. Those are the problems I want to have in the future in Cleveland, and I'm trying to create the baseline so we can have those problems. But I think that the thing that I wanted to challenge in Charles' post was, I think there's still this national narrative of Cleveland being the city of the mistake on the lake. And that narrative is in many ways just tired and really old. And the new story that's emerging is Cleveland is going to lead America in terms of how we think about our industrial revival. We're making things in America again, making things in Ohio again, and I want Cleveland to lead the way.
Yep. My intent was very much to compare Seattle to Cleveland circa 75 to 100 years ago. I mean, I think the cities are incredibly analogous. We're at the top of the world today. Cleveland was at the top of the world. Top companies, booming population, high household incomes, all kinds of great civic, art, culture, architecture getting built. And, we're kind of fat, dumb, and happy. So the software era has been great for us, and my goal really is to get people to wake up and prepare the city for the next act and remind them that prosperity is not guaranteed. And I put that caveat in that thing that said, "Hey, no offense to Cleveland, but it's a good example because Cleveland has fallen far, and we sort of have the same risk in the sense that we've overperformed, and so we've got further to fall, and everybody needs to focus on what happens next and what are we going to do and how do we make sure we're a great place for people to figure out what comes next, because there's a lot of uncertainty about the future."
Yeah, and what I'm trying to tackle is we have the receipts of success and the receipts of progress. And I'm going to continue to be unabashedly proactive and aggressive and reintroducing Cleveland to the world as a model for America. Yeah, exactly. As a model for America on what's possible in these moments, and as a model of what can happen as a Rust Belt city if you don't pivot fast enough. And that's the real lesson in the story, right? We didn't pivot fast enough, and the world left us behind. And now we are a comeback story of reinvention and resilience. And I think there's a lot the country can learn from what we're doing right now.
I think the comparison between Cleveland, Detroit, and Pittsburgh is fascinating because Pittsburgh, they really leaned in. You had good civic cooperation on what comes next. And in the case of Detroit, it was kind of benign neglect. They just assumed the auto industry would always be there. And Cleveland sounds like it was a little bit more controversial, and beyond denial. And that's a huge lesson for Seattle and every city. Change is coming. I mean, the AI world is going to rewire everything, and we've all got to figure out what comes next.
I will say, I just had the mayor. He was then mayor-elect. But I just had the mayor-elect of Pittsburgh and Cleveland before he was sworn in, and we're outpacing Pittsburgh in many ways right now.
All right.
They want to take our playbook on how we really led the nation in office recovery, office conversions to residential. We started doing that in the early 2000s in our downtown, 20 years before the pandemic. They're really excited about the work we're doing around leveraging a brand new, roughly $4 billion tax increment financing district called the Shore-to-Core to Shore TIF to propel our $5 billion efforts to make Cleveland a two-waterfront city. And so I think there's a lot happening in the Midwest right now where a lot of these coastal cities should take notice that the Midwest is coming to eat their lunch.
Well, how to fix downtown is now an issue in Seattle because our downtown is pretty empty.
Yeah, and we're still trying to make sure we can, like many other cities in the country, we have some issues with some of our properties downtown, Class A, Class B, that haven't recovered since the pandemic. So that's still a focal point, but we still have a strong baseline to build off of coming out of the pandemic.
That's great.
Mayor Bibb, you mentioned in your LinkedIn post the Cleveland Clinic and Case Western are kind of two of these institutional anchors for the comeback, and it struck me. Seattle has analogous institutions in the University of Washington and Fred Hutch Cancer Center, but is that enough? And to what extent are you able to leverage those relationships, and how are you seeing that play out?
Yeah, well, for any city to be globally competitive, you need a world-class research institution and research university. And we have that in Case Western. They were just ranked by Time Magazine several weeks ago as one of the top an innovation powerhouse. And then there's a lot of synergy, not only with Case Western and the clinic, but university hospitals and Metro Health in our eds and med sector. But beyond just the eds and meds anchor institutions we have in the city, there are 4 other key sectors where we're really focused on. One, aerospace and defense. We're home to TransDigm and Eaton, Sherwin-Williams, Parker Hannifin, and Lubrizol. And we are one of the largest suppliers in the world that fuels the aerospace and defense sector globally. We're also home to the only NASA research center above the Mason-Dixon line with NASA Glenn. And while the Wright brothers may have taken off their first plane in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and Dayton, Ohio is where the ingenuity started in terms of flight. And so Ohio and Northeast Ohio has a strong legacy heritage and industry might in aerospace and defense. On the advanced manufacturing side, look, we see us being able to really support the semiconductor sector from the supply chain companies that are going to support Intel and other semiconductor players across the country. We're also strong in food manufacturing. Cleveland Kraut is a global competitor, national competitor right now in the food space, headquartered and based in Cleveland, Ohio. And so we have great success in healthcare, great success in aerospace and defense, and also you're seeing advanced manufacturing continue to grow, and it's going to take off again as we see these trends in industrialization continue to grow in its market growth over the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's all going to bode well for Cleveland and Northeast Ohio in the future.
The other is super interesting, right? As things electrify, they're in the middle of that.
Yeah, and Eaton is just spun out a brand new company because of the growth that you're going to see with electrification across the world. So that synergy is also huge. And then Sherwin-Williams just built a brand new skyscraper downtown and is bringing their 5,000 employees back to work, all in the urban core of our city. So there's a lot of good strengths that we can build on as we kind of plot our economic recovery here.
That's great. Well, the manufacturing return, I mean, the thing that's so interesting about that to me is it's really become a software thing, right? All the hardware is, you've got tons of software in the plant, and then you've got software in the devices. So the software world is kind of moving away from just looking at pure software and figuring out how you really embed it in the broader mechanical stuff.
Absolutely.
The other parallel that I wanted to bring up was from Cleveland to Columbus and Seattle to Olympia. A lot of the headlines we've been tracking and reporting lately have been about new taxes coming out of the state legislature here, and that's kind of the lightning rod that sparked a lot of the criticism and the sort of underlying tension that Charles was alluding to in his piece. I'm curious, Mayor Bibb, what are you seeing out of Columbus, out of the state capitol? How is it impacting you? Could you give us some parallels there?
Well, although I'm a blue city mayor in a red state, I will say on the issue of jobs and the economy, we have a great partnership with our leaders in Columbus downstate. Now, we've done a lot of great work with Jobs Ohio in terms of incentives to lure companies back to Cleveland. For example, we work with Jobs Ohio to bring a brand new international flight to Ireland from Cleveland, direct from Cleveland to Dublin, because companies like Eaton rely on that connectivity to our international markets. I would also say, Cleveland and Ohio is an easy place for business. We don't tax corporate profits. We have great R&D tax credits statewide. And so we want to compete with the best of them, from South Carolina to Texas to Washington to California. We want to compete with the best, and we want to make sure that Ohio is an easy place to do business, and that Cleveland is a city that's moving at the speed of business.
Charles, do you want to speak to that? How that compares?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about this conversation is, the Seattle tech community can get The mayor of Cleveland is more responsive than the mayor of Seattle or the governor of Washington.
I will say that I reached out to Mayor Katie Wilson's office yesterday, and they are engaging. They want to talk. So even in the midst of the Seahawks victory parade, they responded.
All right, that's good.
Keep going, Charles.
That's good. Well, I just, our goal is let's get everybody focused on the next act, and both understand the history and realize that business as usual is not going to get it done.
Yeah, completely agree.
Cool. Well, so I sent a message to your destination Cleveland people, and I have multiple people who have approached me and said, hey, I'd love to go with you to Cleveland. So we'd love to do a visit.
It's turning into a delegation.
I love that. I love that. And I love to host the mayor of Seattle. I met her at we had our mayor's conference a couple weeks ago in D.C. And however I can be helpful to Mayor Wilson, I want to be supportive.
Great. Well, we'll invite her to come too.
Yeah. Just to fall on our sword a bit here, I do want to acknowledge that I think the fundamental problem was that the headline on our story and the photo, both of which were picked by the GeekWire team, not by Charles. I want to acknowledge that and recognize that. Because really, I think underneath all of this, the two of you are in a lot of agreement.
Yep.
Yeah. And I would just encourage, Todd, I would just encourage you guys to begin to tell a different story about Cleveland and our comeback and what's happening in Ohio.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to come visit and, use that as an opportunity to tell the story.
Yes.
That'd be great.
And I should note, my co-founder, John Cook, grew up in Worcester, Ohio. And
oh, wow.
His first job was as a stringer. His mom wrote for the Akron Beacon Journal in Wayne County, Ohio. So John knows Cleveland well. And I think John would be a perfect person to send as part of this delegation, Charles.
All right. Great.
Any parting thoughts, Mayor Bibb?
I would just say this, as we think about the future of America and the future of our economy and where the world is going, there is no better place than our respective cities, Cleveland and Seattle, to show the nation about what's possible, how we can confront hard problems, come together, and show what being resilient and what being thoughtful can achieve. And I think that needs to be the story as we celebrate America's 250th birthday, that the future of America is going to rely on having cities like Cleveland and Seattle win now more than ever in this moment. And I think that's going to be the key for our success long term.
Yep. Just got to focus on making that future great.
Absolutely.
Thank you both. Looking forward to continuing the conversation, especially if we can figure out a trip.
Yeah.
All right.
We're game. You tell us when winter's abated.
Sounds like a plan.
That was Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb and Seattle Tech veteran Charles Fitzgerald. A couple of notes coming out of this conversation. As you heard, we have reached out to Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson's office, and they are engaging with us on this topic, so we'll follow up on that. And as you also heard, it sounds like there may be a Seattle delegation to Cleveland in the works, at least when the temperatures get warmer. Charles tells us multiple people have already asked to join the trip. So this story is clearly not over, and we'll keep you posted on GeekWire and the GeekWire podcast. In the meantime, you can read Charles's original column and our follow-up coverage at GeekWire.com. And again, our regular show will be out Saturday morning. That's our live recording from Fremont on Thursday night. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you then.